August. Today I'm going to talk about how to price coaching. I'm not going to give you this is a definitive figure, although I will give you some ideas around kind of a starting point for figures. But I want to talk about the process of how you work out what to charge. And the reason that I want to do this, and I sort of touched on it in yesterday's live stream, when we are training to be coaches and there are some business development sessions, or maybe our professional bodies offer some business development sessions, the sessions around business development tend to be around kind of how to run your business rather than how to build it. And what I mean by that is there are sessions on, right, okay, you want to work out how much you want to earn. So sit down, think of the number you want to earn, think of how much you're going to charge an hour, and then divide that by that, and that gives you the number of clients you need. Now, there are some massive assumptions in there that will prevent coaches who kind of set off with that concept in mind, will cause them to really struggle. And the first is, where are they going to find those clients? Let's say we've sat down and we've said, right, we want to earn, let's use yesterday's numbers. We want to earn £100,000 a year. My coaching package is £2,000. So I need 50 clients. Great. I need 50 clients. So you've got a number. Now, where are you going to go to find them? And where did that £2,000 come from? How did you figure out that £2,000 other than dividing 100,000 by 2,000? No, that's not where it came from, is it? But, other than plucking it from thin air, how did you come up with that number? I've been working with coaches for a really long time. I've been working with the Coaching Revolution. I started it in 2017, so there's 9 years of that. And I was working with coaches before then as well. And what's really interesting is, of all things, money has the most emotional baggage, and pricing is, of course, about money. And we have all kinds of mind monkeys about money, about, we shouldn't charge because this is an altruistic professional service, that if we're going to charge, we should charge a little so that more people can benefit from what we do, that we're not experienced enough, so we can't possibly charge a professional fee. There's loads and loads and loads of stuff, mental baggage around money and therefore around pricing. So baggage aside, I want to talk about how you come to the figure that is one that you can be reasonably confident that the people that you want to work with will pay. So, number one, you need to know who those people are. Professionals isn't a tight enough, or it's not even a slightly focused, but it's not a tight enough focus. Women in transition isn't a tight enough focus. Which women, which transition? And the reason that knowing which women and which transition is important is because you need to be able to find them. And you need to be able to articulate the value of your coaching in a way that they can assimilate, that they can understand and go, oh, yes, I need that. I'd like to pay for that. And as a whole profession, we are incredibly bad at that, at describing the value of coaching in the way that non-coaches can assimilate. That sentence describes what marketing is. Marketing is articulating the value of coaching in a way that non-coaches can assimilate. And I'm going to keep saying that sentence because it's really important. If I ask coaches to tell me what do I get if I work with you, they disappear down a hole of describing the coaching process. And there's a problem with that. Nobody buys the processes of other professionals. Like, we don't buy the process of a conveyance when we're buying or selling a house. We buy the certainty of knowing that it'll be done properly and the most peace of mind we can get from that process. That's what we pay a lawyer for. We pay an accountant so that we don't have to worry about the detail of our end of year accounts, for example, that we buy the security of knowing that when those accounts are submitted, they're correct. Now, obviously, we check them, but what we're buying is that security. So what are your clients buying from you? And again, when I talk to groups of coaches about this, they'll say, oh, confidence, clarity. And what does that mean? What will that clarity give me? What will that confidence give me? Because until you can tell me what I'll get, what's in it for me from working with you, I'm not going to spend £2,000 with you. And when I say I'm not going to spend, I mean consumers, clients aren't going to spend money with you if they don't understand what they're getting in return. And when we are the consumer and not the purveyor, we're exactly the same. We want to know, what are we going to get for this money? We might be able to afford it easily, but we still want to know, what do we get in return? And we are not getting that, or we are not articulating that if we're trying to explain the coaching process. Now, to go back to, well, how do we set pricing? A rule of thumb, kind of price per hour for somebody who has finished coach training and is now building hours and working towards becoming qualified, is £125 to £150 an hour, private client. Obviously, working with organisations, the fees can be very much higher. The lead time is also significantly higher. Procurement processes, preferred supplier lists, etc. That there's lots of people to get involved in the process when you're working with an organisation. And when you're working with a private client, it's one person, and that one person needs to decide, are they going to get out their card and pay you or not? It's just one person and one decision, and they can make that decision easily. When you know who that person is, and I don't mean women in transition or professionals who feel anxious or those who are overwhelmed, because again, we have no way of finding those people. If you think about, I'm going to use LinkedIn as an example, not because it's the only place you need to be, but because all professional coaches should have a well optimized LinkedIn profile. And I have yet to meet the coach whose potential clients aren't on LinkedIn. I've met hundreds who tell me that their clients aren't on LinkedIn, but I've yet to meet the one who actually doesn't have clients on LinkedIn or potential clients on LinkedIn. So if you think about how you find people on LinkedIn, you find them by job title. Now, an interesting exercise is to, I said coaches tell me they want to work with people who are overwhelmed and anxious, or just overwhelmed. If you go to the search bar in LinkedIn and type in overwhelmed, you'll find hundreds of coaches who say they work with people who are overwhelmed. Now, the thing about marketing is that we are completely surrounded by it. We see between 10 and 14,000 marketing messages a day. And our reticular activating systems are incredibly good at filtering out stuff that's nothing to do with us, because it has to be. If we paid attention to every one of those 10 to 14,000 ads that we see, bearing in mind ads are only one form of marketing, we wouldn't have time to do anything else. I mean, think about it. Ads are on the sides of buses. They're on billboards. Billboards used to be static, and now they're digital. So, you can be standing looking at a billboard and see 6 or 7 ads in the time that you're gazing at it. They're in print media. They're in social media. They're, around LinkedIn. They're on the radio. They're on the TV. They're in the cinema. I could go on and on. They're everywhere. And so we get very good as human beings, because we do this all the time, at filtering out stuff that we're not interested in and noticing things that we are interested in. And it's our reticular activating system that does that. And a really good example of your reticular activating system doing its thing is if somebody recommends a film to you and suddenly you see it everywhere. Or you decide to buy a new car and you're quite interested in that model in that color, and suddenly you see them everywhere. That's your reticular activating system going, right, I'm interested in that. So I'm going to start picking up all of the places that I see it. They were there before, but because you weren't interested in them, you simply didn't notice them. And it's the same for our potential clients. They are not looking for a coach. The vast majority of people are not looking for a coach. And the reason they're not looking for a coach is because they don't know what we do. And because they don't know what we do, and worse, they think they know and they're wrong, they don't know when they have a problem that coaching could help them resolve. So they're not looking for us. And so therefore, part of marketing effectively is starting to become visible to them in places where they hang out, on and offline. And if we don't know who they are, we don't know where those places are. Now, I know it feels scary to tighten your focus down to an industry, profession, or sector and to a couple of job titles, but that is what you need to do as a place to start. Because if, for example, you decide you're going to work with lawyers, you know where to find them. We know where lawyers are. We know they're on LinkedIn. We know which professional networking events they attend. We know which conferences they attend. We know which publications they read. We know what professional bodies they belong to. And I could go on and on and on. We know where they are when we know who they are. Until we know who they are, we simply don't know how to find them. Now, the reason that I'm talking about this is because this is important to pricing. Your client is here, your potential client is here, and they are really struggling with something that working with you can help to resolve. You need to know what that is. This problem is so big to them that it's potentially affecting their life, their work, their social life, potentially even their health, their relationships. It's affecting a lot of things. And those things are very expensive. Are potentially very expensive. If this problem is not an expensive problem and an urgent problem, then it can wait. Then nobody's worrying about paying a professional rate. If it's not an expensive and urgent problem, then it's a irritation, not a problem. So you need to understand this lawyer that you've chosen. What is the problem that they're really struggling with? What's keeping them awake at night that coaching could resolve? And when you know that, and you know the cost to them of staying in the situation that they're in, then you can put a price on it, on working with you, on the package that helps them get from where they are to where they want to be. Now, expensive doesn't necessarily mean financially expensive, although it could mean financially expensive. It could mean expensive in terms of their career, which has an element of financially expensive in it. You know, perhaps they want to climb the ladder at work and they're not doing it for assorted reasons. There's a professional expense and an actual expense in terms of the income that they won't generate. It might be a health expense. Perhaps they have you're a health coach and perhaps they have recently been diagnosed with pre-diabetes. So potentially that's very expensive. Maybe there's a relationship that's at risk unless they sort out the problem that's keeping them awake at night. And that could be terribly expensive. I can go on and on and on. The places in which they are expensive, the areas of life in which they are expensive can be different. But the problem that you want to work around, and coaches do normally know what problem they want to work around, has to be urgent and expensive. And when you know what that problem is, when you can describe it in the same words as your potential clients use, when you can talk about how the rhythm of that person's life is affected by this problem, and you understand what they think they want instead, then you can market to them. And you can set a price. Because the price is, if this is where they are and this is where they want to be, the price has to be less than it's costing them now. So provided that the fee that you charge is less expensive than them doing nothing. Once they understand that you're there, once they understand that you have knowledge and understanding of the problem that they're struggling with, and once they can see that you empathize with them, and once you are describing their situation in their words, they will develop know, like, and trust for you. And that those three things have to be in place before somebody will pay you. So even if they have deep pockets, and even if you absolutely know that you working with you could help them resolve a problem, unless they know it, they won't pay. And I have lots of coaches saying, well, 125 to 150 pounds an hour is a lot of money. Why don't we just make it 50 pounds an hour and think how much bigger an audience we'd have? And it doesn't work like that. People won't pay 150 pounds for a session unless they understand what they're going to get. They won't pay 50 pounds for a session unless they understand what they're going to get. And they equally won't pay 10 pounds a session or even 5 pounds a session, because we don't spend money on things that we don't understand. And so knowing who your client is, knowing the problem that they've got and the impact it's having on their lives, and understanding the cost of that impact makes designing a coaching package an awful lot easier. It's not a simple process. Packaging and pricing sits on the marketing side of our business, not the delivery side of our business, because packaging and pricing depends on who our client is, what the problem is, etc. And it's not a simple process. But the mechanics of it are exactly what I've described. You need to know who they are. You need to know what they're struggling with. You need to know the cost of that to them. And you need to be where they are, explaining why you absolutely know and understand the problem that they've got, how it's impacting them, and that you can help them. Now, one of the things that coaches will say to me is that they find that their best coaching happens when they don't know anything at all about their coaching clients. So how can this work? And the bottom line is, if you want to coach people that you have absolutely zero knowledge and understanding of, that you're going to go into this fresh, if you like, then that's associate coaching or an employed coaching, where somebody else is finding the client. With finding your own clients, with private client or organizational client work, there is no situation in which you cannot be in a position where you understand the situation that they're in, because until you can articulate that to them, they won't pay us. So I talk about this idea of a weighing scale. On one side, well, on this side, oddly, I usually say this side, sit our delivery skills, so our coaching skills. And on this side sit the skills we need to create the opportunities to do that coaching. On this side is where we do need to understand who they are and what they're struggling with. When they arrive in the coaching room to be coached, our professionalism means that we leave our knowledge and understanding at the door, that we coach them in the same way we would coach somebody that we don't know anything about. Now, there's a lot more I could say about that, but I think I've got the point across. So pricing and packages. Oh, just let me put one thing in here that is quite important. We don't sell coaching by the session. We sell it by the package. And preferably done in such a way that it's quite difficult to break it down into an hourly rate. I can talk more about that in another live stream. This one is specifically about pricing. But once we have our package and we know we've tailored it for exactly the kind of client that we want to work with, because we know who they are. And the reason we want to know who they are, to reiterate, is because then we know where they are. We know the problem that they're struggling with. We know that that problem is urgent and expensive. At that point, we are able to develop a package and put a price on it that will be a price they are willing to pay. So how much we want to earn is a nice hypothetical exercise if we're doing it as a newly minted coach. but it doesn't say anything about where we're going to find those clients. And until we know where we're going to find them, we're really going to struggle. If you'd like to have a conversation with me, a robust conversation, if you like, if you completely disagree with what I've said, why don't you register for my Nail Your Niche challenge? It's not happening until September, when the kids are back at school and summer is over. Perhaps we might get an extended summer this year, but anyway, September. It runs from the 7th to the 10th of September. It's light on sitting at a desk and doing, and heavy on thinking. But in that environment, you will have the opportunity to ask all of your questions and to disagree with me as strongly as you like. And we can have a really robust conversation about the things that you currently think might be true and that maybe aren't. And by the end of the 4 days, you will have a clear understanding of how marketing for coaches works. And it's fun. It's really fun. I'll put a link to register for the challenge around this video. I'll put it in the comments, in the post, and I'll put the link in the comments too. And I'll see you tomorrow when we're going to talk about, let me just check, what coaching for free costs us. See you tomorrow.